Hello, my random viewers, and welcome to Randomly Offensive. Today we will be continuing the story of Xiaoyu, and I will be doing a small recap. However, if you have missed the previous videos, they'll be linked at the tippy top of this video right here, right now. If you want to click it on them and then come on back, that's just fine with me. Now, we last left off with Xiaoyu unleashing her rage, her hidden rage, and going on an onslaught against Jinpachi, while also confronting her inner demon and the broken promise she made with Jin as they were children. After the battle with Jinpachi and after her confrontations with her inner demon, she was met up by Li, who was sobbing and in tears, afraid that he was going to die that very night. And sure enough, when Xiaoyu had entered the mansion with Paul Phoenix, she had seen the dead body of Li laying on the couch with a bloodied knife on the coffee table across from him. And as she looks at the body, she sees a chip taped to his left wrist, and as she grabs the chip, the door begins to creak open, and Xiaoyu looks at the door, and there stands Li. But however, on the couch is also the dead body of Li, and so Xiaoyu looks at Li, who stands in the doorway, and Li sees her with the chip. "Oh, Xiaoyu, I really wish you hadn't done that," he says as he points a gun at Xiaoyu. "Are you the one that killed Li?" she asks, and Li, still pointing the gun at Xiaoyu, No, I did not kill him. That was someone else. I'm simply his replacement and his superior to carry out his plan," answers the Li standing in the doorway. And so Xiaoyu looks at the chip in her hand. "Well then, you should have no issues with me taking this chip, since it was Li who told me about it in the first place," she says, and Li's eyes begin to widen. "What do you mean? He told you to take it? If he would have told you anything about the chip, I'd remember," he says, but then he freezes. Did he find a way? Did he find a way to make part of the plan without me remembering? He says to himself. Just exactly when did he tell you about the chip? And Xiaoyu decides not to answer, realizing that the old Li and this one are not on par, and that the original Li had planned for something that Xiaoyu and the rest of them are not prepared for and are unaware of. And so Xiaoyu puts the chip in her pocket. "That is all I'm gonna tell you, Li. I'm not gonna tell you anything else." And so Li then pulls the hammer back on the pistol, and right as he is about to fire and pull the trigger, Paul Phoenix tackles Li to the ground as the gun goes off, barely missing Xiaoyu. And so Xiaoyu quickly runs to help Paul. However, unexpectedly, Li, with the strength that the original never had, throws Paul Phoenix off of him. As Paul flies down the hallway, Xiaoyu sees Li standing up and pointing the gun at Xiaoyu once again, so she runs towards Paul and grabs Paul by the elbow and hoists him up as they run out, bobbing and weaving as the bullets fly towards them, with Li screaming at them, "I will not allow you to destroy the plan. I will not allow you to make this go wrong." he says as he's firing the gun at them. However, they manage to make it to the front door and burst their way out of the mansion. And Paul Phoenix looks at Xiaoyu. "I still need the chip," he says. And Xiaoyu looks at Paul. "The chip? How would you know about the chip?" "The text told me to look for the chip," says Paul Phoenix. And Xiaoyu, realizing that the original Lee must have put together the perfect plan to set all of this up, to set up Xiaoyu meeting the new Lee and set up Paul for the rescue. "I got the chip, Paul," she says, and so Paul looks at her. "All right, do you know what it is? Do you know what we need to do with it?" he says, and Xiaoyu shakes her head. "I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what the hell we're supposed to do. Lee left that all out," she screams at Paul. Paul, now being confused. "Well, why is he trying to kill us in the first place? Why was he trying to kill you if this is his plan?" And Xiaoyu looks at Paul, not knowing if it's part of Lee's plan for her to tell him or not knowing what the new Lee is or where he comes from. Is he an evil twin? Is he a clone? What is he? So Xiaoyu, trying to figure out the best way to answer Paul, then hears a crashing sound from one of the windows of the top floor in the mansion as Lee is flying out. And as he lands on the ground, he looks devilishly at Paul and Xiaoyu and charges towards them. "I will not fail. I will not allow him to be my superior," says Lee. And Xiaoyu stares at Lee as he charges and gets in her fighting stance, with Paul standing by her side in the same stance. Lee dives in the air and sends two side kicks in mid-air, with both kicks hitting Xiaoyu and Paul, separating the two of them. As he twirls around, he lands with one foot and throws his other foot into a roundhouse connecting to the face of Paul. And Paul then takes the blow, but recoils and delivers a punch to the gut of Lee, causing Lee to slide backwards with his feet dragging on the ground. And Lee looks up at Paul. "I'm far stronger than my predecessor," says Lee. Of course, Paul has no idea what Lee's talking about. However, Xiaoyu has a pretty good idea. And as Paul and Xiaoyu square up once again to take on Lee, Lee begins dancing his feet across the ground as he swings his arms back and forth, getting ready to take on Paul and Xiaoyu with the strength he's never had before. And so Paul charges in before Xiaoyu, and then Xiaoyu charges in afterwards. Paul throwing multiple and many blows at a high rate, jabbing and hooking, and then delivering beneath roundhouse kicks. Lee's dancing fighting style is dodging every single one with ease, while Xiaoyu is doing much smoother, long-ranged attacks that are designed to rotate the attack into a grapple. However, Lee is managing to block those and revert her grapples back onto her, twisting her joints and throwing her to the side while taking on Paul. And Xiaoyu feels something opening, her feeling compassion for Lee. Not the one she's fighting, but the one that has died. And then she has selfish anger, for she keeps getting thrown to the side. As Lee focuses on Paul, Lee obviously sees Paul as the better threat and thinks of Xiaoyu as a low-rate fighter. And Xiaoyu feels her eyes changing. She feels her eyes becoming red, and so she takes a deep breath and enters a meditation state as she sees the figure of herself, the smoky, see-through figure with red eyes. "You're not taking over," she says, and the figure looks at her. "You need me to pull this off," says the figure. However, Xiaoyu just looks at the figure with stern eyes. "You're staying out of it. I will get you when I need you," says Xiaoyu. And Xiaoyu wakes back up in full control and sees Lee taking on Paul. However, right before Xiaoyu is able to join the fray, Feng has shown up and grabs her by the shoulder and looks at her and gives her an envelope. "This is everything you're gonna need to know about that chip," he says. "I'll take care of Lee from here. You and Paul, go do what you need to do," he says. However, Xiaoyu looks angrily at Feng. "What, do you think that I'm incapable of taking care of Lee?" she says, and Feng just looks back at her out of the corner of his eye. "You're fully capable of taking out Lee. This isn't about what you can do, it's about what you need to do. You beating Lee was never a part of the plan," says Feng as he just confidently continues walking. And with one hand, he grabs Paul, who's in the middle of fighting Lee, and pulls him back, throwing him backwards towards Xiaoyu. And he looks at both of them. "Get in the damn car and get the hell out of here. Everything you need to know is in that envelope," he says. And so Xiaoyu and Paul hop in the car and they start driving, though they have no idea where they're driving to. As Xiaoyu opens up the envelope, she sees coordinates. "I don't know how to read these," she says. Paul takes him away from her. "Here, I got this." He looks at him for a while driving. "I don't know what these are," he says, and so Xiaoyu smacks her forehead. "How can neither one of us know how to read coordinates?" "Well, I was never in the military, kid. I ride motorcycles. I like GPS and maps. I bet you we could find someone to help, though," he says, as he quickly does an illegal U-turn and starts driving in a different direction. Feng, meanwhile, stands in front of Lee while Lee is dancing his feet around. "What are you doing, Feng? This isn't really part of the plan." And Feng looks at Lee. "Oh, not your plan, but it's definitely part of Lee's plan." Lee, still continuously moving his feet as if he's ready to fight, responds to Feng. "So, that confirms it. He really did make a plan that I was unaware of, didn't he?" And Feng looks at Lee. "Oh yeah. How the hell would you not even expect that? The man you replaced was one of a kind, a brilliant mastermind, and a strategic legend. Do you honestly think you stand a chance?" he says, looking at Lee. "Oh, I think I stand a chance. Helping Jin will only cause more havoc, more turmoil," says Lee. "However, helping Kazuha, making sure Kazuha gets that chip, it could save the world," says Lee. And Feng just continues looking at Lee, not showing anger, not showing happiness or sadness, but only pride. Just continues staring down at Lee. "You obviously have no idea what's at stake. You obviously have no idea
what Lee has been through. He knows the right path and we're gonna stay on it. And since he gave his life for this cause,
says Fang as he gets into a fighting stance,
I will make damn sure it was not in vain,
says Fang. And so Lee lunges towards Fang and throws a strike towards Fang's face. However, Fang catches it with 2 fingers only, stopping the punch dead in its tracks. And so Lee quickly recoils with a roundhouse, again aiming for the face of Fang. However, Fang ever so smoothly just lifts his left hand and blocks it with his wrist. And getting angry, Lee throws one more punch to Fang, but Fang then just grabs the wrist of Lee and squeezes it. And Lee falls to his knees in pain and amazement at the strength of Fang. And Fang looks at Lee.
There's a reason Lee put me in this position,
he says. Fang then slaps the side of Lee's head, knocking him out, but knocking him out gently. As Lee's body hits the floor, passed out and knocked out, Fang stares down at the replacement of Lee.
Well, that's my part. I've successfully finished my duties in the plan,
he says as he walks away.
The rest is up to everyone else, I suppose.
He continues talking to himself as he looks in the sky, walking away with his hands folded behind his back, proud that he successfully accomplished everything that Lee needed him to accomplish to make sure the plan goes by smoothly. Meanwhile, Paul Phoenix has driven Xiaoyu to a very nice house, and as they walk into the house, there stands Steve Fox eating a bagel with cream cheese and drinking a coffee. Hey, Paul, what's up, my man? He says, and then Steve, before waiting for Paul to respond, so, I have all the plans to rig the next tournament, and we're definitely gonna win, says Steve to Paul, and Paul looks at Xiaoyu embarrassed.
Sorry, kid. Cheating is kind of the only way to win this thing nowadays,
he says, and Xiaoyu just ignores him. And Paul takes the envelope from Xiaoyu and gives it to Steve.
We need to know where these coordinates are. We need them to be transferred into a map,
he says. And so Steve Fox looks at him. No worries, my man, says Steve, as Steve quickly jots down a map and gives it to him. And Paul, waving the map at Steve,
I'll be back to finish the plans on how we're gonna rig the next tournament. For now, I gotta help out this little kid,
he says. And so Paul and Xiaoyu leave. However, Xiaoyu then starts looking around frantically. Oh no, I'm such an idiot, she says, and Paul looks at her. What's wrong? I forgot Panda at the bar, she screams. Panda is happily at the bar, sitting on his stool, as the stool is bending underneath his weight, and Panda is happily munching on peanuts and drinking a soda out of a straw while watching cartoons on one of the TVs in the bar, kicking his legs back and forth, laughing at the cartoon and enjoying his peanuts. And then he hears the door open, so with the straw and the soda still in his mouth, he looks over happily at the person that just walked in and waves. However, the footsteps just continue walking to Panda, and Panda grabs a handful of peanuts and extends the peanuts out to the friend that Panda recognizes. Paul, Phoenix, and Xiaoyu finally make it to the bar, and Xiaoyu runs into the bar to see Panda. However, there is no sign of Panda, but instead knocked over tables and chairs with the peanuts scattered on the ground and the soda spilt, and Panda's little pink hat on the ground. And Xiaoyu picks up the hat and looks to see a present nicely wrapped onto the bar. And so she walks to the bar, and upon the present is a letter. "I really need that chip back," reads the letter. "I have your friend, and if you want your friend back alive, you will bring the chip, and you'll bring it alone. Signed, Lee." And so Xiaoyu then cautiously opens the present, and what she sees inside horrifies her as she falls to her knees, screaming in pain and terror, hating herself for putting Panda in danger once again. And Paul walks up to Xiaoyu and looks into the present, and there lies the cut-off ear of Panda. And so Paul puts his hand on Xiaoyu's back.
"What can we do?" he says. "What will we do?"
says Paul. And Xiaoyu looks at Paul. "I'm sorry, Paul, but we aren't going to do anything. I'm going to go there by myself and give Lee the chip," she says with her voice breaking, trying not to cry. And so she stands up, however, her legs are shaky, and she gives Paul the letter that Lee had given them and the map that Steve had made them. "I will come back, and then we'll fulfill the plan. For now, you do whatever you need to do with Steve and your friends." And Xiaoyu walks out, Paul wanting to stop her, but knowing that she needs to do this. And so Paul gets in his car and drives back to his cabin with Xiaoyu walking, trying to keep strength in her legs, trying to keep her mind from going into the worst scenario as she walks to the mansion of Lee. That will be where we are leaving this video off for today. I will be continuing Xiaoyu's story. This is the longest story out of the Tekken franchise. Xiaoyu's story just has no end to it. I have probably 2, maybe 3 more videos of Xiaoyu, and her story just keeps getting better and better, and her character arc is just so well respected. And with that all being said, thank you guys for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button. Take care of yourselves, and bye.